What is going on, IK fam? And I'm back again today for another dope Infinity Kingdom video. Really excited because today I'm going to give you guys kind of our first few day overview for Server 36 and also introducing our new kind of day in the life of a server or server day in a life. I'm going to come up with something good, don't worry. But essentially, it's just going to be a kind of server series from starting out in a server from near day one throughout everything that's going to happen. I'm going to try and have these be pretty consistent where we'll do one or two a week, at least once a week, essentially just to kind of give you guys updates on how the server's progressing, if there's any milestones or monuments that come up, certain things in the timeline or chronicles, how we're dealing with them, really just try and give you good objective viewpoints on some ways that you can go about managing your server with any kind of challenges that might arise or come up at any point. So with all of that being said, of course, if you enjoy the content, sub to the channel, give us a thumbs up, hit that notification bell for when we have new videos coming out, and then of course, if you want to join our Discord for my community, along with if you're someone that's in Server 36 and you want to get access to our Kingdom section, you could join that as well. Now, let's dive in to how is Server 36 going currently. So, I wanted to start off with the map, and from when we got in day one, we had a pretty successful landing. And then we ended up bringing over our jumper accounts at about 2.5, 2 2/3 days into the server. So now everything is really starting to kind of stabilize into the early game. The server's about 4 days old right now. And you can see kind of territory distribution is okay so far. I think the one thing that the territory distribution shows currently is that there's just a little bit more general activity in red, and then some in blue, and then kind of goes to green. Now, this can happen differently in every server. It does not necessarily mean or indicate in any way, shape, or form that, you know, the server is going in one direction or not. The great thing is that we actually have players already set up in our server as far as the actual leaders and officers from the top group of alliances. So on day one, really end of day one, day two, we went around and we messaged all of the top alliance leaders. We're still finishing up too as well with some of the ones that are kind of lower outside of the top 20 and officers, and we've been working on bringing them into the server. In addition to that, we saw probably about 100 to 150 people that ended up joining our Discord server, mainly because of some really good things that we did from day one. And let me show this to you if I can. I always forget if I have to zoom in a little bit more. Great. So let's take a look at, for example, we'll do it the old-fashioned way. So we'll look at Alliance Power, right? And then let's just say we'll click on Imperial here. Let me see. Okay. So you could see that in their Alliance Declaration, which, keep in mind, there's an Alliance Declaration and a Notice Board. The Declaration is the public board that all players can view. The Notice Board is specifically just for your Alliance that only people in your Alliance can view. Now, you'll notice that one of the things you're going to see here is you'll see a Discord server for the S36 Discord. Let's click on number 2. You'll see a link to the S36 Discord. Let's click on number 3. You'll see a link to the S36 Discord, right? Some different formats, but more or less everyone's pretty consistent, right? You'll see S36 Discord. Looks like they did some formatting there. You'll see S36 Discord. You'll also notice that, you know, we have the top 6 spots right now in the server. And then you'll see, I think me and Orion for blue, we're just a little behind BSS right now. But then you'll notice even for my alliance, right, Discord server at the top, you'll notice that there is Tut has his Discord server, right? So all of our alliances are promoting the Kingdom Discord, right, with a similar format. And that's what I really wanted to show off because I think that's part of some of the most important pieces if you are going to try and develop your player conversion over to your Discord server as early as possible, right? This shows phenomenal early unification and was probably one of the most important driving forces to getting so many players onto the Discord. We even just wrapped up or when we did, I should say, our Tuesday town hall meeting on our server, right, we ended up peaking at almost 40 players, which this was our third town hall, but our first official one for the server. And we had about 38, 39, I think, at the peak, which is great numbers to see people tuning in for almost up to 2 hours. And I'm hoping that as we continue to do those weekly, if not twice a week, right, we'll still continue to see those numbers rising, which, again, is really just fantastic to see. Now, outside of that, you'll also notice that the server power gaps are pretty close, right? It is slowly working down as well, right? We have a pretty good strategy in place for how we're working that out. Before Imperial had about a 1.5 mil over number 2. You can see now that's kind of down to a little over 200K. And at least as of, I want to say, when I was recording this video and the morning of, they were all the top 3 were all within 100K power of each other. So, again, this is something that you're going to continuously work on, right? As I said, we have a policy and some instructions in place for how we're going to work on balancing out that power. And one of the things I'm sure a lot of y'all hear me talk about is one of the biggest reasons I think power balance is so important is because when you have even balance of, when you have even alliances that are close in power at the top, and then of course trickling down as far as you can, it increases the overall amount of engagement that players are going to get out of a server and out of their time in your alliance. This is because if the alliance power is not too far spread, then what happens is that players will feel like they're able to contribute more to alliance or server-wide events that your alliance is participating in. If the power gap is really wide, then players may notice that and see that reflecting or reflective of the current rankings for that event. Let's say that you have 1 or 2 alliances that are really far out in power, and then when you go to the server-wide event, you see the number 1 and number 2 alliance are really far ahead in points for that event over the number 2 and or number 3 and so on. That can be a negative perspective because players can then feel as though there's no point in participating in this event beyond maybe just putting in the bare minimum for that event. That will cause players over time to slowly become inactive, to contribute less, to participate less, to socialize less, and may just eventually turn out where they leave the server or they just stop playing altogether. So that's why I think it's really important, if you want to have good overall server health and activity, that you work on balancing out the alliance power early on. This is also going to help you prep for things like SVS and AVAs down the road, more so SVS. And I think it's just a really good way to approach, at least for how we're doing it. Outside of that, we have almost all of the top 20 alliance leaders in our Discord, along with a bunch of officers as well. We have almost 200 players in the server converted over to our S36 section. Like I said, I think things are going really well. We do have a couple, I don't know if I want to say bad apples, but a couple bad warriors, so to speak, that are on our server. The cool thing about that is that we've already set up a server-wide blacklist. We already have a real-time PvP cord channel where we basically track these players 24/7, and we're always posting coordinates for them. Any players that are on our blacklist basically are just not allowed to be in any alliances until they're off the blacklist, which means that the leaders of those alliances and officers are informed pretty much right away if they accept one of these players, and we let them know, like, look, if you don't want yourself and your officers to come under attack, and then potentially your players if necessary, then you need to remove this player from your alliance. And we'd like to start with the leaders and the officers because typically those are the ones that are more in the management positions before we then take it to next steps if necessary. And what we found is that this works really well because some of the ways that you can deal with rogue players early on is you limit their options. If they're not able to be in an alliance, that limits their ability to get helps and to progress their account. In addition to, if you're constantly tracking them and watching them, you can attack their farmers anytime, which will limit the amount of resources they can get. And then, of course, for any players that are able to hit any of those rogue players, then you're constantly always giving them a hospital bill. You're stealing any resources that they've gathered, which basically more or less will limit them to just having to purchase everything. And depending on the level of spender, maybe some will be okay with doing that, maybe some won't. But it is something that is crippling their playing experience. And I think that is something that is good to do early on. Something that we've already put measures in place for. And we're just going to be further building on that as we continue to become more and more efficient and organized from where we've started. Outside of that, I want to say that everything is pretty good. I know some of our big goals next is for the City Siege event, which ends here, and I want to say in about 9 days, at least from when I recorded this video. And you can see that is something that every new server is going to deal with, right? That's where you get players in your alliance get gems based on the faction power that your alliance reaches. It also tells you what the points are allocated for each city. Also to keep in mind that for any of the new servers now after the version 1.2 update hit, right, you're only going to be able to capture up to level 5 cities, and I should say up to level 5 non-capital cities, based on the Chronicle timeline that will open up prior to City Siege ending. So you'll have to kind of figure out how you want to go about allocating faction points, right? Do you want to try and get as many alliances as you can to 350 faction points, and then the rest of the remaining alliances try and get them as high as you can? Do you want to get as many alliances as you can to 200 faction points, and then allow for more alliances to get the 200 faction point bonuses, which means that you're able to give more players more gems overall, arguably. Right, so I think part of it is just going to depend on how you're approaching it, unless, your server is just, a survival for the fittest, Hunger Games, Battle Royale type thing, and people are just kind of taking whatever they want. But these are some things that we're working on right now, and I think we have a good game plan. There's some really good people that have been helping us out with that level of organization, and it's been awesome just to kind of see people step up, right? I'm always a big fan of players that take the initiative, right? They're willing to help out, they want to support, and if they see an opportunity to do so, right, then they will. And so I think outside of that, everything that we have going on right now in S36, I think, is, like I said, going really well. I'm really excited to see how it progresses over the next couple days, going into the next week for our next update. But at least as of right now, I'm very hopeful. And I think that we have a good group, thankfully, with the amount of time that we were able to take in preparing and not having to be rushed like we were in previous projects. We were able to take time and actually conduct a application process for our leaders, our officers, and then even do a follow-up interview process that I did for about 30 to 45 minutes in voice calls with all the leads that we have now. And I think for the most part, everyone is pretty much on the same big pages, if you will, for where we'd like the server to go in. Now, I really think it just kind of comes down to really fine-tuning some of those smaller details in multiple areas. But I think the fact is that we have a lot of people that are working together, a lot of people that have joined the project and are still joining S36 for the right reasons, and I think that's the most important thing, right? I've always said that any server, any kingdom, that has or will eventually have something like server versus server, kingdom versus kingdom added, is always going to be by far the most important event, and really what every kingdom or server should be working towards. And that's because, unlike something like Alliance versus Alliance events, server versus server or KVK events include all your active players in your kingdom or server that want to participate. And that is what is going to generate and keep player retention, is people competing and contributing and engaging in these big server-wide events. So I think that's it for me. I'm at about almost 14 minutes now. And I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of first overview, update, look into how S36 is going. And of course, it's never too late to join. So if you're interested in joining S36, or even if you'd like to maybe just kind of keep up to date on maybe migrating here once we open up at 90 days, again, feel free to reach out to me, or you can join our Discord server for more information, as that will probably be the first place that we end up posting that when it comes to eventual 90-day migration options. And that's it for me. I will catch you guys later. Until the next time, peace!